Any other topic or subject you think is paramount that you've come across? Like something that's really common outside of seller disclosures?
I'll tell you, during COVID, the thing that I've seen that's been, I would have told you 5 years ago was not an issue or not a big issue, that I'm seeing all the time now is property line disputes.
Oh,
or,
yes, yes.
Or just disputes between neighbors. With everybody being home and working from home and seeing their neighbor or interacting with their neighbor, I'm getting way more and consistent work that deals with disputes amongst neighbors. That when people are working all day and they're not at home, maybe they didn't notice it, or it didn't bother them as much, or wasn't as prevalent. And then all of a sudden, with everybody forced to be home and in close quarters with each other, I'm seeing a lot more of those types of disputes. Just won a case on a property line dispute, and that is now transformed into 3 more cases dealing with property line disputes. Just recently, and unfortunately, I can only attribute it to the fact that everybody's kind of home and realizing things that they otherwise probably wouldn't have noticed 3 years ago.
That makes sense, because people feel claustrophobic a little bit, and they want to get out, and they want to spread out, and they realize my neighbor's a little bit closer than I care, or that looks like they've been using part of my property for a while and I have not noticed. Yeah, that, I don't know at this point, once you're already in the house, there's nothing that we as realtors can do, but they don't do surveys anymore. They used to do a mortgage survey, but they don't require that anymore. So it's I don't know if that has to be something that comes back when you buy a property and have a survey done. It's another expense. I don't know.
Well, the interesting thing too about a survey is a survey can be wrong, and it can just be what they believe the property looks like, instead of an actual physical stake survey.
Yeah.
And so you'll get people who believe that I own X, and then the neighbor says, no, I actually physically staked it, and you don't own X. You own X minus 10 feet or 15 feet. I've had a couple cases where somebody's wanted to put a metal stake through somebody's concrete in their driveway. Like, this is my property line, and you don't get to have your concrete that's been here for 26 or 22 years. It's those types of disputes that, you wish that neighbors would just work out and, talk to your neighbor and, hey, can we figure this out? What can we do here? But unfortunately, a lot of these times it does involve active litigation. And so
Oof.
That's it's unfortunate, but it's the reality of what we're dealing with in real estate for our business, at least in Michigan recently.
And I think the last, and it's been a while, that I was quoted, stake surveys are at least $1,000.
And candidly, depending on how far they have to go, it can be
Okay.
more than that.
Okay.
But yes, I would venture to guess at this point, as busy as contractors and vendors are right now, you're probably looking at a multiple of that.
Okay. So if you're buying a property that's not in a plotted subdivision, and you're actually buying it for land, then it may not be a bad idea to consider doing that investigation ahead of time.
Yeah, I mean, it's an expense up front. And again, it's what's your risk tolerance? Do you think there's going to be an issue or not? Most often, most people don't when they buy, and then when an issue occurs, then they have to go and they're forced to get a survey, and now you're talking about potential adverse possession or acquiescence or other issues. And so, oftentimes you can try to avoid those if you spend the money up front. But most often, particularly when someone's buying a house, they're usually putting as much money as they can into that purchase of that home.
Yeah.
So, it's not something that often happens.
So if I remember when I was taking the class for real estate, it's a 15-year use and occupy possession or something. I don't remember the language, but I do remember that it freaked me out. Is that if somebody is maintaining, occupying, owning a piece of someone else's property for 15 years, you can actually claim it as your own. How does that go?
Yeah, so the concept there is it's adverse possession, and in Michigan there are multiple elements to adverse possession. I hope I don't miss any of them, but it has to be open, visible, notorious, continuous, exclusive. So what do those concepts mean? What it means is, if you're going to be claiming that this land is now your land, it has to be open, out in the open, that people can see you. It's got to be visible. So, what does that mean? Well, if you do something like build a tunnel underground and it's not visible on top of the ground, somebody could say, wait a minute, that tunnel doesn't count, kind of thing.
Okay.
It's got to be continuous. What does that mean? It means it's got to be for the whole 15 years that you have to claim exclusive possession and ownership of that parcel. But it doesn't necessarily just mean you. If you only bought it 7 years ago, but the prior owner had it for 8 years before that, you can use a concept called tacking. So you can have a 15-year period that your predecessor in title and you occupied or utilized this space, this area,
Whoa.
and you can tack it on with predecessors in title. And so, those are the types of concepts. One of the other concepts is called hostile. That doesn't mean you have to physically be hostile with your neighbor. All that really means is it has to be adverse to the interests of the other party. So if the other party came and said, wait a minute, you're on my property, and says, you need to get off my property, that would be them saying to you that they're challenging, and they're saying, this is my property, and let's say they put up a fence, even for a temporary period of time, to try to stop that adverse possession claim from reaching the 15 years. So those are the kind of concepts that we have to look at. And every case in adverse possession is different, and you just need to actually look through all the elements and see, have you met all the elements, and do you have a better claim than the other side? What we normally saw in this circumstance is around the 2008 to 2010 period, when real estate in Michigan really took a hit.
Yeah.
What we saw is a lot of companies went belly up. A lot of developers went belly up, and they didn't complete projects, or they just kind of sat on the property. And so, if they started developing a project in 2005, and they have a bunch of units that they were going to create for a condominium, let's say, but they never touched unit 17, 18, and 19, right? And unit 16 decides it's going to use part of unit 17. Those are the kinds of issues that we run into where, okay, all of a sudden the bank took it back, had the property for a few years. The bank didn't do anything with it. After a few years, the bank then sold it off to a new developer. And new developer comes in and says, well, I want to construct here. And now you've got an issue with the, wait a minute, I've been maintaining this area for more than the 15 years. So those are the kind of things we would go through and look at, and then make a determination as to, do you have a case, or do you have a problem, and, is it appropriate to send a letter to the neighbor and say, hey, you're on my property, you need to stop. So.
Wow. That's a lot.
It's this is my business, so
Right.
This is the stuff I deal with on a daily basis, but it can be a lot.
Yeah.
And they can be intricate, and oftentimes with property line disputes, at least in my experience, people get very protective of their property rights, or what they perceive to be their property rights. And so that also can really drive a lot of this animosity or frustration, unfortunately.
Yeah, especially if they're purchasing the property because they want to have that extra land, that extra space. Because I'm finding a lot of people, and it's probably due to COVID, they're not looking for their neighborhood cookie cutter subdivisions. They want that acre minimum because they want that space.
Space, absolutely.
Because for 2 years we've been like this. I mean, we're still wearing these. Well, I would say maybe just a quarter of the country is still wearing these now. So, and probably by next month, we might be the only two. I don't know.
We'll just hope we hope that things calm down, and we won't need to wear these in the future, so you can actually see our faces.
Right. Although, I mean, hey, you don't have to shave. You don't have to worry about purchasing lots of makeup. I mean, there's pluses.
There are benefits.
There's a lot of financial benefits, actually.
Yeah.
People can put off getting that dental work done because who's going to see?
No one's going to see it.
So there's a lot of pluses if you look at it that way. So yeah, there's always a silver lining somewhere, right? So, but anyway, I think that we could probably go into a ton of different subjects, but I just wanted to kind of touch on a couple of things just to give people an idea, especially with seller disclosure, because that's huge. And lot lines, had not thought about that one. I only had an issue with that once. I don't know how that got resolved. My client was really mad because he felt like I should have known. But because it was a misrepresentation of the listing agent that this extra lot was part of that. I don't recall, it was so long ago, I don't recall if it was on the PA or not. I was a newer agent. I think I'd only had my license maybe a year or two. So I don't know, I don't remember. But when she went to spread out is when somebody showed up and was like, hey, that's my lot. She's like, well, wait a minute. So I know now. So, but yeah, so I think that's about that.
It was great. Thanks for the questions. If anybody has any further questions or need real estate, I'll just tell you from a personal perspective, I love working with Edna. If you're looking for an agent to walk you through the process and knows what she's doing, just from my perspective, I think you are a consummate professional to me, and I certainly appreciate that. And then obviously if you have legal needs or legal questions, we do take potential client calls and try to limit them to 15 minutes. Whether that is always successful or not is a different story, but we do try to see if somebody's got a potential case or a cause of action, and how can we assist in effectuating what your needs or desires are. So feel free to reach out to me, and I appreciate that you've got my contact information in the description. That's awesome of you, and it's been a pleasure talking to you. So
it's always a pleasure talking to you. Always appreciate you. Appreciate the kind things that you said. But yeah, like he said, they don't mind answering questions. They do answer the phone. I do appreciate that. I've been sending all my clients to call them, or just people that I know in general that say they need an attorney for real estate or anything else, because they can also refer you, because it's in their industry. So I'm pretty sure they know attorneys in other fields as well. So thanks again for joining. And like I said, if you have any questions, reach out in the comment section. All my information in the description. Definitely his information with his company will be there. And then we'll see you next time when we come up with some more topics that we think you need to know to answer those questions that you didn't know that you had.
Thanks so much.
Have a great day.